Today's video is another video about a presence sensor that I picked up from Apollo Automation. This is the MSR-1, and this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to get it set up and installed into Home Assistant. All right, let's talk about what you get when you order one of these things. It came in this fancy bubble wrap here, which is cheap packaging, but it works. And you get a little sticker, so you can stick on your sticker board if you're interested in that kind of thing. Also comes with a little business card. There's a URL on the bottom you can click or just scan the QR code and it won't focus. But you basically, there we go. Plug it in, you visit the wiki, plug it into power, connect to the hotspot. I don't know why it says connect to a hotspot. We're going to see about that. And then of course you get the sensor in this nice little bag. Now you can get this in two different versions. You can get the CO2 version or the non-CO2 version. I've got the non-CO2 version. As far as size goes on this little device, here's a picture of it next to a quarter on their website. So it's quite a tiny device, and you can actually see it here. If I put a pen or something next to it, if I can find a pen here, or even a AA battery. There's a AA battery. So it's not any bigger than a AA battery, all directions, and then very narrow on the side. Now, one thing to notice too is that this case, there's the power adapter on it, and you can see inside there is some extra plastic hanging out. And so I'm going to have to open it up. And by the way, you can just slide this open like this, and you can actually dump it out. This is the whole unit right here. And then you have on the back side, you have QR code and some other information about it. MSR-1 revision 9. So I can just take this case and get in here and pull out that little bit of stuff and get it to work. So I'll clean it up so I can plug it in, and we'll get started on getting this thing added to Home Assistant. All right, real quick before I get into adding it to Home Assistant, let's talk about a few features of this little device. It is an ESP32C3. It's got Bluetooth, as I mentioned, mmWave motion detection. It's got temperature, humidity, and pressure built into it. A light sensor. This one does not have CO2. It supposedly has RGB, a buzzer. There's some GPIO. It is USB-C for those that like that. That is me as well. And it is going to be integrated into ESPHome and Home Assistant. That's how we're going to use it. And just some other random pictures. You can see the size here again. You can set this thing pretty much anywhere. This doesn't show the power connected to it though. So sometimes they do that and say, look how tiny it is, but you just can't set it anywhere because you need to plug it into some sort of power. There are some accessories you can get for it as well that allow you to, and here's the power, that allow you to plug it into sockets. Here's an interesting little thing that I've seen before. You can plug this thing into the wall, plug that USB into it, and it basically is a 90-degree 3D printed power connector that you can set it on top of, and you can just plug it directly into the wall. And here's all the stuff that you'll see in Home Assistant. So let's go ahead and get this installed into Home Assistant and see what we can do with it. All right, getting this into Home Assistant, this is the little card that I showed you a minute ago. It has a little URL on the bottom of it, wiki.apolloautomation.cloud. And that basically takes you over to this site right here where they have all of their different devices, general information and whatnot. This is the MSR-1. It says CO2, but I have the non-CO2 version. There are some setup pages here. And there's basically a generic getting started guide that we go through. And it's essentially going to do what we normally do with our phone and any ESPHome device, where we're going to connect to it, and we're going to, or it's going to create its own little Wi-Fi hotspot. We're going to connect to it, and then we're going to set up our Wi-Fi network on it. So let's go through that real quick, and then we'll come back over and get it set up into Home Assistant. All right, as I power it up, you'll see a light on there. Wow, it's actually the whole thing glows. Let me turn my lights off. You can see that just pulsating like that. All right, so I'm assuming it's going to have Wi-Fi network on it. So we're going to get our phone set up, and we're going to go to our Wi-Fi network and try to find that network it's talking about. And there's the Apollo MSR-1 hotspot. Click on that. And it's connecting. And obviously it goes through and checks the quality of your internet connection, which I don't care about because we're not doing that. And while we're waiting for that, you can see here that open up, connect to Apollo MSR-1. All right, now it's connected. You'll see that in a second here. Once connected, it should automatically open the dashboard for your sensor. Select the Wi-Fi network you'd like your sensor connect to, and then input the information. All right, so it said it should automatically open a dashboard. Well, I probably have to go to something here. All right, so it didn't, but most everything on ESPHome starts with 192.168.4.1, and we'll see what we can get with that. That's not working, so let's unplug it, plug it back in again. So I wasn't able to connect to it with my phone, so let's go over to, I'm going to try it on my PC, which you can't see, unfortunately, or my laptop. See if we can get it to connect on my laptop. Make a difference there. See if we can connect. Let's see if we can connect to the laptop here, or to this. There it is right there. We're going to connect to the hotspot. Oh, you can't see that. Let's try this. There you go. I'm filming myself with my phone, bouncing all over the place, trying to connect to the hotspot on the MSR-1. All right, so it's connected now, no internet. Let's see if I open a browser. Does it take me to the hotspot? No. So let's go to 192.168.4.1. Okay, now we've got some stuff going here. I don't know why that wouldn't work on my phone. I will choose mine right there, which you can't see. I will type in the password. All right, now it says it's going to try to connect to the network. Please give it some time to connect, and we'll see if this actually works the way it's supposed to. I mean, this is typical of every one of your ESP devices. You basically connect it to the Wi-Fi network with its own hotspot first, and then after that, you're able to use it on your local network. So that is the intent, and hopefully that's what just happened. If it did, we should have a new device show up here. So let's go over to Home Assistant. And this is my test Home Assistant instance, but it doesn't matter. It should show up here as well since I'm running ESPHome notifications. New device was discovered. Let's see if it's the right one. And there it is. Hooray. So connected to Wi-Fi right now with this little guy right here. And let's go ahead and configure it. Ask me if I want to add this to Home Assistant. The answer is absolutely submit, and it's created a configuration for it. I'm just going to put it in, I don't know, the studio for now and finish that. So now under ESPHome, you should have those devices listed. And here's the Apollo multi-sensor. And here is all of the stuff that's in here. You can turn on the RGB light. Let's just do that. Turn on the RGB light, turn off these lights. It's very bright. It's also strange because it looks weird out of the box. It's pretty much covered up by the case. There's no hole in the side of the case for the RGB light, so we can just turn that back off again. Don't need that. And what do we have here? We have the humidity, pressure, temperature. Because there's no CO2 sensor on the board, it's going to show unknown, even though the firmware for it, or the software for it, is the same software. It just doesn't have a sensor. The ESP temperature, now that's interesting. That's the actual device temperature, 114 degrees Fahrenheit. And then our current ambient light, 705. If I turn this off, how quickly does that update? 705, 141. There it goes. The temperatures, there we go. Yeah, it takes a few seconds for the temperature updates. I don't know what the temperature sensor update frequency is on that. All right, so that works. That should bring the lights back up here in a second. And then we have no UV because we are inside the house, unless one of these key lights is giving off some UV. All right, so radar detection distance. Right now we're at 0 inches. Radar move energy is 100%. And then radar moving distance is 20 inches. So these are detection distances, moving distances, targets still. And there's different zones. There's 3 different occupancy zones on here. So if we go over to their documentation right here, go back over to that page and one more back. So calibrating and updating. So updating the firmware talks to you about how to do that, how to tune the mmWave using Home Assistant. So we can go in here and we can open the Home Assistant, navigate to Settings, Devices and Services, ESPHome, and select it, which we did. Go down to the Configuration section. So down here is Configuration. All the stuff you can set for this. And then does it tell you, scroll down the Diagnostic section, see the rim, it shows the movement here, okay. So here are some gate number settings for this. So gate number 1 gives you anywhere from 0 to 0.75 meters or 0 to 2.46 feet. So 2 to 5 feet, basically 5 to 7.3 feet. And then of course in meters here. So you can set all of the gate numbers to determine the distance. And here's a nice little graph for you. Gates 1, 2, 3. So if you're really close or you really want to be, you don't want it to detect unless you're really close, you would set it in gate 1. If you're more than 5 meters or up to 5 meters, you want to set it to gate 7 on here. And there's the default move threshold, default still threshold for these as well. So moving the gate still and move threshold slider to the right increases the amount of energy needed to trigger the sensor. Do this if you want the gate to be less sensitive. So the farther to the right, the less sensitive it is. So if we went over here and we change these, let's say gate 0, move threshold, I want it to be quite insensitive, less sensitive, I would put that way. If I want it super sensitive, I would move it back this direction and set those. Now, what you need to do on this stuff is you need to make sure that you're setting it where you're going to set it and then do some experimentation. The present sensors that I've played with so far, 2 of them, yes, that makes me an expert. Those sensors all do, depends on the environment you're in. In the room I'm in here, for example, there's a door over here on my right-hand side that you can't see off camera, and it leads to another room. I don't want people outside of this room triggering stuff that the sensor automation is going to do on here. So I set the sensitivity to basically stop at the room. These mmWave sensors, by the way, can go through objects. That's what makes them very interesting. So if you set your sensor range and sensitivity too far out past the end of those doors, someone walking by the door will actually trip the sensor. So you have to be very careful. So that's why you can't come in here and say, I can't come in here and tell you set it to whatever you want to set here, because you want to be able to adjust it for the environment you set it in. It depends on where you're sitting or where you're set the device. It depends on the environment, depends on what's on the other side of the walls or the glass or whatever you're setting it to. Even if you set it to face an outside wall or a garage wall or something, it can potentially go through those garage walls and do that and pick things up, or the outside wall. Your neighbor walking by, for example, outside, could potentially set off your automation or whatever you're using with this presence sensor because it's going through the wall if your walls are super thin or the material just allows the mmWave stuff to go through the wall. All right, so one thing I want to point out too is, number one, I'm not going to go through the entire calibration and setting up this. It would make the video too long, and as you already know, my videos get a little bit wordy. So on the how-to page here at the very top, there's a really couple of good, they're about 5-minute, 6-minute videos each, and they talk about how to set up the device through zones and whatnot, because you can do up to 3 zones on here, and then you can get a little bit more advanced into how you tune things. So make sure you watch these videos. They're on the wiki page for Apollo Automation. You can go through that. I do want to point out that if you want to see what your current values are, you would come over here and you would actually turn on the radar engineering mode under the Home Assistant page. And when you click that, all these values down here are going to show you what's going on. And they talk a little bit about this in those videos. You can actually take the device and you can change the distance on here. and you can see what the energy is, and you can also see what the threshold is, or the G0 move energy and the still energy. So if I'm still right now, which I'm probably not still enough, you can see which area it comes in. Now, the way they talk about zones in the video is that you can set those thresholds, those different G0 through G8 thresholds. You can set those to say, let's say G1 through 3 are zone 1, 4 and 5 are zone 2, and 6 and 7 are zone 3. And you set those by the value or the energy needed to make those trigger. And then you set your radar ending zone. So this one's 10 feet right now, 36 feet, and 100 feet. So that means that you would get distances up to 10 feet, and you would set the values in here for, let's say, 10 feet here, wherever that would be on this graph. And you would use these sliders, G0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 0 through 8 in this case, to actually set the values and thresholds for that particular zone. You really can get into some pretty good detail on how to set that up. So I'm not going to go into all of that right now. Just watch those 2 little videos on there if you want a better understanding of how to do that. And I recommend that because it's going to tell you how to use some of this. Then you can turn off the radar engineering mode. A couple other things I didn't mention about temperature sensitivity and whatnot is that they actually set these temperatures over here. They are set based on the standards, the NIST standards, I think it is. And they're measured against those standards against a reference thermometer. You can get your own reference thermometer and set it in the environment that you're going to put it in, and then make slight adjustments to the temperature calibration. And you can do that here. This is a temperature offset for the unit, and then this is a humidity offset. So if your stuff is off based on your reference thermometer, you can set those as well. One thing to consider too is that the package itself has a temperature, or creates its own temperature or heat. And so that's going to skew the numbers a little bit, but that reference that they set it for will make that overcome that. But you can still adjust it based on your environment. One other thing you can do is there is a GPIO on this device, and you can set up the GPIO to actually to use an external temperature sensor that gets it away from the unit. And then if you want to do that, you're going to get better accuracy. I'm using this more as a presence sensor and not a temperature sensor. The temperature sensor piece is nice to have, but because it's all in one, you can put this, let's say, in your garage and get your temperature, your garage humidity. If you have the CO2 sensor, you can get the CO2 in the garage, especially if you're parking vehicles and whatnot in there. And then you can also use it as a Bluetooth proxy in Home Assistant. So it can be set up somewhere where it can actually proxy Bluetooth devices back into your Home Assistant instance. And one example I can think of is, let's say you have a presence sensor or a vehicle detection sensor, some sort of little Bluetooth puck or whatnot that's in your vehicle. When it rolls into the garage, if you have this in your garage as a Bluetooth proxy, you can use it as a determination whether the vehicle is present or not. So that's one thing you can do. Now, this device has a lot of interesting things that you can do with it. If you go over to the GitHub page, let me get back to the top here. If you go back over to the MSR-1, you have some other examples. So you have 5 pages of examples. So here's some from GitHub, and it'll show you some things that you can do with it. All the code's here, by the way. You can also use this code or look at this code if you want to do something with that. You can add an LED buzzer. You can switch to a different theme, and all of that's available in here. Fridge dashboard, environment, dark, I don't know, all these things do. Trash night, LED automations, holiday automation, flashes green and red, plays jingle bells. This thing does have a little speaker on it, and I actually took an example that they had on one of the automations, and if you play it, which you may or may not be able to hear on the video, it'll play stuff like that on the device. So, I mean, for what it's worth, you can do that. All right, so some final thoughts on this. Is this a worthwhile device to purchase? In my opinion, it is. The cost is similar to some of the other devices out there. I have the NPTech one that I reviewed before. That one's a similar price to this one. It's about $35 or so, I think, right now. Let's see if I can actually find it on their website. This device without the CO2 sensor is about $35 US. If you add the CO2 sensor, it's about $55 US. So without the CO2 sensor, it's reasonably priced. It's less expensive than some of the other ones that I've seen out there. So it's kind of low end price, low to mid-range price on it. But it comes with a CO2 sensor, a temperature sensor, Bluetooth proxy or Bluetooth in it. It has a pressure sensor in it. It has the radar for up to 3 zones, completely customizable for your environment. You can set all the thresholds the way you want to set them. So to me, it's well worth the cost of it, and the size makes it really nice too. And if you buy the little accessories that you can see, and I showed you this one already, if you buy this little accessory, this allows you to plug it into a wall, just a wall socket, and then power it that way. It also has the ability to mount in different scenarios or different mount options. The sensor stand is what I'm talking about here. So here's that little sensor stand. You can stick it on the back of that little sliding case, and then it's fully articulatable. It'll turn around in different directions. Can be screwed in the wall, attached or whatnot. And for that $5, you can get the mount. I believe they have the plans for this stuff where you can actually 3D print the stuff yourself. So if you wanted to print that mount, you probably could do that. You probably could print any mount you wanted if you have a 3D printer and just make it work. You just stick it to the back of that case and there you go. So again, I think this is a nice little product. I think it's a job well done by Apollo Automation. I'm going to go put it in the garage and see how well it plays out there with the heat and the cool and everything else that goes on. But I think it's going to be a really nice product over long term for me to be able to use in my automations and all that. So if you have any questions, make sure you put those down below. I answer best on Discord. It's more easy. It's easier for me to get to Discord than try to figure out YouTube comments. If you would like to subscribe to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. If you want to support me in what I do, you can either become a channel member for a couple bucks a month, or you can support me on Patreon, send me something on Ko-fi, all those things. And for those that are our channel members and supporters already, I really appreciate it. It helps me make these videos and keep things coming. So with that, thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next one.